These 4 words were the last anyone ever heard from David Johnston before 300-degree volcanic debris traveling at hundreds of miles per hour consumed everything in its path. But his urgent warning wasn't the most haunting final message we'll explore today. Some last words are peaceful, others are profound, but the most chilling final messages are those spoken in the seconds before catastrophe strikes, when the speaker realizes their fate is sealed, yet somehow finds the strength to reach out one last time. Today we're examining 5 cases where disaster victims left behind haunting final words that were captured on recordings, radio transmissions, and phone calls. These aren't just stories. They're the actual last moments of real people facing the unimaginable. Case 1. Kevin Cosgrove's 911 call. On September 11, 2001, Kevin Cosgrove was just another business executive going about his Tuesday morning. The 46-year-old vice president at Aon Corporation had 3 kids at home. He worked on the 105th floor of the South Tower, one of the highest occupied floors in the World Trade Center. When the first plane hit the North Tower at 8:46 a.m., Kevin and his colleagues could see the smoke and flames from their windows. But they were in the other tower. They were told to stay put. Everything would be fine. Then, at 9:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 175 slammed into the South Tower between floors 77 and 85. The impact was 20 floors below Kevin's office, but the building shook violently. Smoke began pouring through the ventilation systems. The stairwells filled with toxic fumes and unbearable heat. Kevin Cosgrove found himself trapped with 2 colleagues in an office, as thick black smoke made it impossible to see more than a few feet. The heat was becoming unbearable. At 9:35 a.m., he made a desperate call to 911. The dispatcher tried to keep him calm.
Okay, just try to hang in there. I'm going to say this for you're in an air-conditioned building. It's really bad. It's black. It's arid.
But Kevin's voice betrayed his mounting terror. He coughed and gasped, describing how it's really bad, it's black, it's arid. The smoke was so thick he couldn't see anything. He gave his location, 105th floor, Tower 2, and begged for help. Then came the words that would haunt everyone who heard the recording.
Lady, there's 3 of us in this office. We're not ready to die, but it's getting bad.
Kevin said, his voice cracking. We're not ready to die. The dispatcher assured him help was on the way. But Kevin knew. Deep down, he knew.
Where are you? What are you guys up to? We're getting there. Doesn't feel like it, man. I got young kids.
He pleaded. For the next 20 minutes, Kevin stayed on the line, describing the deteriorating conditions. The smoke grew thicker, the heat more intense, his breathing more labored. The dispatcher kept him talking, kept him focused, even as they both understood the terrible truth. There was no way to reach him in time. At 9:59 a.m., after being trapped for nearly an hour, Kevin was still on the phone when a deep rumbling began. The South Tower had begun its collapse. In the background of the call, you can hear the building starting to give way, a sound like thunder growing closer. Kevin Cosgrove's last recorded words were a terrified scream.
Hello? Hello? We're looking at the financial center. 3 of us, 2 broken windows. Oh, God!
The line went dead. The entire South Tower collapsed in just 10 seconds, taking Kevin and nearly 600 others with it. His body was later recovered from ground zero. The 911 call was played during the trial of 9/11 conspirator Zacharias Musui. Jurors wept openly. His widow couldn't bear to listen, but Kevin's desperate plea, "We're not ready to die," became one of the most human voices from that day of unimaginable loss. Case 2. Todd Beamer's rallying cry. While Kevin Cosgrove was trapped in a burning tower, another drama was unfolding 30,000 feet above Pennsylvania. Todd Beamer was supposed to be home that morning. The 32-year-old software account manager from New Jersey had 2 young boys and a 3rd child on the way. But a last-minute business meeting meant he had to catch United Airlines Flight 93 from Newark to San Francisco. Todd was a former college athlete, the kind of guy people naturally looked to in a crisis. He'd soon need every ounce of that leadership. At 9:28 a.m., just 42 minutes after takeoff, 4 hijackers stormed the cockpit. They killed the pilots and took control of the plane. The 37 passengers were herded to the back of the aircraft. The hijackers claimed they had a bomb, but Flight 93 had taken off late. By the time it was hijacked, the other planes had already hit their targets. When passengers started making phone calls, they learned the horrifying truth. They weren't hostages in a traditional hijacking. They were weapons in a suicide attack. The passengers of Flight 93 quickly realized their plane was likely headed for the US Capitol or the White House. They had a choice: accept their fate or fight back. Todd Beamer tried to call his wife but couldn't get through. Instead, he was connected to GTE supervisor Lisa Jefferson. For 13 minutes, Todd calmly described the situation. He told her about the hijackers, about the bomb threat, about the dead pilots. Then he asked her to do something for him. If he didn't survive, would she call his wife? Tell her he loved her. Tell her about their conversation. Lisa Jefferson prayed with him. The Lord's Prayer, the 23rd Psalm. Then Todd put down the phone, but didn't hang up. Lisa could still hear everything. The passengers had voted. They were going to rush the cockpit. They gathered whatever they could use as weapons: coffee pots, food trays, anything. Todd Beamer looked at the others. "Are you ready?" he asked. Then came the words that would become a national rallying cry. "Okay, let's roll." Those were the last words Lisa Jefferson heard from Todd Beamer, but the cockpit voice recorder captured what happened next. Sounds of struggle, shouting, the hijackers yelling in Arabic, passengers screaming, "Let's get them!" At 10:03 a.m., Flight 93 crashed into an empty field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania, traveling over 500 miles per hour. Everyone on board died instantly, but their sacrifice meant the hijackers never reached their target. Investigators believe the passengers' revolt forced them to crash the plane early. Todd Beamer's words, "Let's roll," became more than just his final statement. President Bush would invoke them in speeches. They'd be inscribed on memorials, written in books, painted on walls. 2 simple words that captured the moment when ordinary people chose to become heroes. His widow, Lisa, later said those words were just like Todd: direct, decisive, no hesitation. Even facing certain death, he was ready to act. Case 3, David Johnston's warning. May 18, 1980. It was a clear Sunday morning in Washington state. David Johnston had the best view in the Pacific Northwest, and the most dangerous job. The 30-year-old volcanologist was stationed at Coldwater 2 Observation Post, 6 miles north of Mount St. Helens. For weeks, the mountain had been rumbling, venting steam, growing a massive bulge on its north face. Everyone knew an eruption was coming. The question was, when? David was the perfect scientist for this job, meticulous, enthusiastic, but never reckless. He'd actually tried to keep others away from the mountain, insisting on maintaining the evacuation zone despite pressure from locals who wanted to return to their homes. That insistence would save thousands of lives. That morning, David was alone at his post, taking measurements, monitoring equipment. It was routine work, until 8:32 a.m. A magnitude 5.1 earthquake struck directly beneath Mount St. Helens. David watched as the entire north face of the mountain began to slide. It was the largest landslide in recorded history, but that wasn't the real danger. The landslide released pressure that had been building for weeks. The mountain didn't just erupt, it exploded sideways. A lateral blast of superheated rock, ash, and gas burst from where the mountainside had been, racing directly toward David's position at nearly 300 miles per hour. David had seconds, maybe less. He grabbed his radio.
"Vancouver! Vancouver! This is it!"
7 words. That's all he had time for. A warning to his colleagues at the USGS base in Vancouver, Washington. The big one was happening. The eruption they'd been waiting for, preparing for, dreading. The pyroclastic flow reached temperatures of 570 degrees Fahrenheit. It moved faster than sound. When it hit David's observation post, it scoured the entire ridge clean. David Johnston was vaporized instantly. His body was never found. The only trace of his position was discovered years later. Fragments of his trailer, Pieces of equipment, melted and twisted beyond recognition. 57 people died in the Mount St. Helens eruption. But that number would have been in the thousands, if not for David Johnston and his colleagues, who insisted on maintaining the evacuation zone. His final transmission, "This is it," told other scientists the eruption had begun, possibly giving them precious seconds to take cover. Today, the ridge where David made his last transmission is called Johnston Ridge. A visitor center there tells the story of the eruption and the young scientist who gave his life in the pursuit of knowledge and public safety. His last words, urgent, professional, without a trace of panic, embodied everything his colleagues remembered about him. Case 4 PSA Flight 182's final cry. September 25, 1978. It was a perfect morning in San Diego. Clear skies, unlimited visibility. Captain James McFerrin had been flying for Pacific Southwest Airlines for 17 years. This approach to Lindbergh Field was routine. He'd done it hundreds of times. PSA Flight 182 was descending over North Park, a residential neighborhood. In the cockpit with Captain McFerrin were First Officer Robert Fox, Flight Engineer Martin Wan, and 2 off-duty PSA pilots riding in the jump seats. Air traffic control warned them about a small Cessna in the area. The crew reported visual contact. No problem, they had it in sight. But in the busy airspace over San Diego, keeping track of a small plane against the urban landscape below was harder than it seemed. Somehow, in those final moments, the PSA crew lost sight of the Cessna. At 9:01 a.m., the 2 aircraft collided. The Cessna was destroyed instantly. The PSA jet's right wing was severely damaged, and the aircraft immediately went into an uncontrollable dive. Inside the cockpit, alarm bells screamed. The crew fought desperately to save the plane, but with a damaged wing and failing controls, they were helpless. Captain McFerrin managed one brief radio transmission.
We're going down. This is PSA. Okay, we'll call equipment for you.
The cockpit voice recorder captured the final 20 seconds. They are among the most haunting ever recovered from an aviation disaster. As the ground rushed up to meet them, Captain McFerrin said something that sounds almost casual, almost resigned.
Exactly.
But then came something completely different. In those final seconds, with death certain and imminent, one of the flight crew, investigators could never determine exactly who, cried out something utterly human, utterly heartbreaking. "Ma, I love you." Those were the last words recorded before PSA Flight 182 slammed into North Park at 9:02 a.m. The impact destroyed several homes. All 135 people on the PSA jet died, along with the 2 in the Cessna and 7 residents on the ground. It remains California's deadliest aviation disaster. When investigators released the cockpit transcript, that final cry, "Ma, I love you," struck a chord around the world. Here was a professional airman, trained to handle emergencies, reduced in his final moment to a child calling out for his mother. It was a reminder that behind the uniforms and procedures, these were human beings facing the ultimate terror. Case 5, Captain Davidson's Promise. October 1st, 2015. Hurricane Joaquin was bearing down on the Bahamas as a Category 3 storm. Most ships had already altered course or stayed in port. But the SS El Faro, a 790-foot cargo vessel, was heading straight into the storm's path. Captain Michael Davidson was no rookie. The 53-year-old Maine native had over 20 years at sea. He'd plotted what he believed was a safe route to skirt the hurricane on the ship's journey from Jacksonville to Puerto Rico. But hurricanes are unpredictable. Joaquin shifted course. By the early hours of October 1st, El Faro had lost engine power. The ship was adrift in 30-foot waves, taking on water, listing badly. The crew of 33 fought desperately to restore power, to pump out flooding compartments, to save their ship. At 7 a.m., Captain Davidson made the call no captain ever wants to make. He sounded the abandoned ship alarm. The bridge's voyage data recorder captured everything that followed. In howling winds and mountainous seas, the crew struggled to launch lifeboats. Some made it off the bridge. Others were trapped below decks as water poured in. But 8 minutes after the abandoned ship order, Captain Davidson discovered someone was still on the bridge with him. A young helmsman, paralyzed with fear, unable to move as water flooded the wheelhouse. The ship was literally sinking beneath their feet. Most captains would have already left. The maritime code says the captain goes down with the ship, but it doesn't require him to die trying to save someone who won't save themselves. The terrified sailor cried out, "You gonna leave me?" Captain Davidson's response revealed everything about his character. Without hesitation, he shouted back, "I'm not leaving you." Let's go. He could have saved himself. He could have made it to a lifeboat. Instead, he stayed, trying to lead the panicked crewmen to safety. "Come on," Davidson urged. "You're not going down. Let's go. It's time to come this way." Those were Captain Michael Davidson's last recorded words. Seconds later, the bridge was overwhelmed by water. The recording ended. At 7:39 a.m., the SS El Faro sank in 15,000 feet of water near Crooked Island in the Bahamas. There were no survivors. All 33 souls were lost. When investigators recovered the voyage data recorder from the ocean floor, Captain Davidson's final moments stood as a testament to leadership and duty. He literally went down with his ship, but not out of tradition or stubbornness. He stayed because he wouldn't abandon a terrified young sailor. "I'm not leaving you." 4 words that defined a man's character in the face of certain death. These 5 cases span different disasters: terrorism, volcanic eruption, aviation accidents, maritime tragedy. But they share something profound. In their final moments, facing imminent death, each person revealed something essentially human. Kevin Cosgrove's desperate plea reminded us that nobody is ever ready to die, especially when they have children waiting at home. Todd Beamer showed us that ordinary people can summon extraordinary courage with just 2 words. David Johnston proved that duty to others can override the instinct for self-preservation. The PSA crew member's cry for his mother stripped away all pretense, revealing our most basic need for love and connection. And Captain Davidson demonstrated that true leadership means never abandoning those who depend on you. Their last words were captured by chance, recorded on 911 tapes, radio transmissions, cockpit recorders, phone lines. Technology preserved these final human moments, transforming them from private endings into public testimony. We remember them not because of how they died, but because of what they revealed about how to live, with desperation and hope, courage and fear, duty and love. Every one of these people woke up that morning thinking it was just another day. They had no idea they would speak words that would echo through history, words that would be studied, quoted, and remembered long after they were gone. Which of these last words stays with you after the lights come back on? Do they change how you think about those final minutes before everything breaks?